I should have turned back when the trail marker was missing. I told myself the detour would save time. The main trail looped north for another 3 miles, but the ranger I met that morning mentioned a shortcut through the ridge. He said it was unmarked but obvious once you knew where to look. I was running behind schedule and the storm front was rolling in faster than the forecast predicted, so I took the turn where he said it would be. The path narrowed almost immediately, hemlock branches closing overhead until the sky disappeared into a canopy of dark green. My boots crunched over pine needles and the air smelled like rain and rotting wood. I kept my pace steady, checking my watch every few minutes, convinced I'd rejoin the main trail within the hour. The first drops hit when I crossed a dry creek bed. Cold and fat, they drummed against my jacket and turned the rocks slick under my feet. I moved faster, gripping exposed roots to pull myself up a steep incline, my pack bouncing hard against my shoulders. The trail was barely visible now, just a suggestion of flattened earth between the trees. Thunder cracked somewhere close and the wind picked up, bending the tops of the pines until they swayed like they were trying to shake loose. I should have stopped to set up the tent. I should have waited it out. But I was already imagining the trailhead parking lot. My car, the heater running full blast. The rock I stepped on shifted. My ankle rolled and I went down hard, my knee slamming into stone. Pain shot up my leg, sharp and immediate, and I grabbed at the ground to stop myself from sliding. My hand closed around a clump of moss and it tore free, sending me skidding another few feet down the slope. I landed on my side, gasping. My pack twisted under me. The rain was coming down in sheets now, cold enough to sting. I tried to stand and my leg buckled. The pain was different this time, deeper, grinding. I looked down and saw the unnatural angle of my shin, the way my boot sat wrong. I screamed. The sound ripped out of me and disappeared into the rain and wind. No echo, no response. Just the roar of the storm and the creak of the trees. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers numb and shaking, and pulled it from my pocket. No signal. I held it up, turning in place, watching the bars stay flat. Nothing. I was maybe 4 miles from the trailhead, maybe more. I tried to remember if I'd seen another hiker that morning. I hadn't. The ranger was the last person I'd spoken to, and he'd been heading the opposite direction. The cold set in fast. The rain soaked through my jacket and my shirt, and the wind cut straight through to my skin. I dragged myself under a low-hanging spruce, using my arms to pull my useless leg behind me. Every movement sent fresh waves of pain up my thigh and into my hip. I got my pack off and dug through it for the emergency blanket, my hands so stiff I could barely grip the zipper. The blanket crinkled as I unfolded it, thin and metallic, barely bigger than a beach towel. I wrapped it around my shoulders and pulled my knees up as much as I could without moving the broken one. My teeth started chattering. I clenched my jaw to stop it, but the shaking spread to my shoulders and arms. I knew what this was. I'd read about it, heard the safety briefings. Hypothermia starts slow. Shivering, confusion, loss of coordination. Then the shivering stops, and that's when you're in trouble. I wasn't there yet, but I could feel it coming, creeping in with the cold. The rain kept falling and the temperature kept dropping. I checked my phone again. Still nothing. I thought about trying to splint the leg, trying to crawl back the way I'd come, but I couldn't remember the path. Everything looked the same now, just trees and rain and gathering dark. I yelled again, over and over until my throat was raw. I listened for voices, for footsteps, for anything. The storm swallowed every sound. My chest felt tight and my thoughts started slipping, losing their edges. I tried to stay focused, tried to make a plan. I had a lighter. I had a knife. I could start a fire if I could find dry wood. But everything was soaked and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I couldn't hold the lighter steady. I couldn't grip the knife. I just sat there under the spruce, wrapped in foil, feeling the cold sink deeper. The shivering slowed. My fingers didn't hurt anymore. That should have scared me, but it didn't. I felt tired, the kind of tired that makes you want to close your eyes and let go. I thought about my sister. She'd expect me back tomorrow. She'd call when I didn't show up. But tomorrow was hours away and search and rescue wouldn't even start looking until someone reported me missing. By then it would be too late. I knew that. I could feel it in the way my body was shutting down, piece by piece, pulling inward to protect what was left. The rain turned to sleet. I watched it bounce off the ground, tiny white pellets mixing with the mud. My breathing was shallow now, each inhale a struggle. I tried to move my fingers and they barely responded. The cold didn't feel like cold anymore. It felt like nothing, like absence. I thought about the ranger again, about how easy it had been to trust him, about how simple it would have been to stay on the main trail, to be slower, to be safer. The light was fading. I couldn't tell if it was the storm, or the day ending, or my vision failing. Everything was gray and blurred and distant. I wanted to fight it, but I didn't have anything left. My body had already made the decision. I was just waiting now, wrapped in foil under a tree, alone in the rain. The last thing I felt was the sleet on my face, melting against skin that couldn't feel the cold anymore. She was already gone when I reached the cliff. The argument started over nothing. Kara wanted to stop for lunch and I wanted to push through to the campsite before the afternoon heat set in. We'd been hiking for 3 days and the small irritations had piled up into something bigger. Something that made her voice sharp when she said she was tired of me always deciding everything. I told her she was being dramatic. She told me I never listened. Then she turned and walked ahead, her pace faster than it needed to be, her shoulders rigid. I let her go. I figured she needed space and we'd both cool down by the time I caught up. I gave her 15 minutes, maybe 20. The trail was narrow here, cutting along a ridge with steep drops on the left side and dense brush on the right. I could see her boot prints in the dust, clear and deliberate. I followed them around a bend and that's when I saw the backpack. It was lying on its side near a gap in the trees, the straps splayed out like it had been dropped in a hurry. Kara's pack, blue with the patches she'd sewn on from every park we'd visited. I stopped walking. My stomach twisted. I called her name. My voice sounded thin in the open air. No answer. I moved closer to the pack and saw the trail beyond it, the way it curved toward a steep drop where the ground just ended. There were scuff marks in the dirt, fresh ones. And then I saw the smear on a flat rock near the edge, dark and thick, already starting to dry in the sun. I knew what it was before I let myself think it. My hands started shaking. I dropped to my knees and crawled to the edge, not trusting my legs. The drop was maybe 60 feet, straight down to a tumble of boulders and scrub pine. I scanned the rocks, my eyes jumping from shadow to shadow, looking for her jacket, her hair, anything. I didn't see her. I screamed her name again, louder this time, my voice cracking. The wind carried it away. I looked back at the smear on the rock, at the way it trailed toward the edge like something had been pulled. Not fallen. Pulled. That's when I noticed the prints. Not boot prints, paw prints. Huge ones, pressed into the soft dirt near the backpack. 4 toes and a pad, each mark deep and clear. I'd seen prints like that in a field guide once. Mountain lion. My breath caught and I sat back hard, my mind racing. We'd been hiking for days and I hadn't seen a single sign of a cat. No scat, no scratch marks on trees, nothing. But that didn't mean it hadn't been there. Didn't mean it hadn't been watching us, following us, waiting for one of us to separate from the other. I grabbed Kara's pack and tore through it, looking for her phone. It was in the front pocket, the screen cracked but still working. No signal. I tried mine. Same thing. We were too far out, too deep in the backcountry. I stood up and turned in a slow circle, scanning the tree line. Mountain lions ambush from above or behind. They go for the neck. They drag their prey to a secure spot to feed. My stomach turned and I had to bend over, my hands on my knees, forcing myself not to be sick. I started moving along the edge of the drop, looking for a way down. There was nothing. No path. No handholds. Just loose rock and a straight fall. I thought about trying to climb it anyway, but I knew I wouldn't make it. I'd slip and end up at the bottom with her, broken and useless. I had to get help. I had to go back to the last ranger station, maybe 8 miles down the trail. But that meant leaving her. That meant accepting that she was down there, that she'd been dragged off by something that could move faster than I could, something that had been stalking us for miles without me noticing. I looked at the prints again. They led away from the backpack, into the brush on the right side of the trail. I could see where branches had been bent, where the ground was disturbed. The cat had taken her that way, into the thick cover where I couldn't follow, where no one could follow without crawling on their hands and knees, through thorns and deadfall. I thought about the smear on the rock, about how much of it there was, about what it meant. My chest felt tight and I couldn't catch my breath. I tried calling her name one more time, my voice hoarse. The silence that came back was complete. No birds, no wind, just the vast, empty quiet of the ridge. I grabbed both packs and started running back the way we'd come. My legs felt like they weren't mine, like they belonged to someone else who knew how to move through shock. I kept looking over my shoulder, expecting to see the cat behind me, expecting to feel claws in my back. But there was nothing, just the trail and the trees, and the awful knowledge that I'd let her walk ahead, that I'd been annoyed with her for wanting to stop, that the last thing I'd said to her was that she was being dramatic. The run back took forever. I didn't stop, didn't slow down. My lungs burned and my legs cramped, but I kept moving, the packs bouncing against me. I thought about her down there in the rocks. I thought about the cat coming back. I thought about how long it had been following us, how many times it had been close enough to strike, how it had waited for the exact moment when we split up, when we were vulnerable, when she was alone. When I finally reached the ranger station, the sun was setting. I burst through the door, gasping, barely able to get the words out. The ranger on duty stood up fast, his face shifting from confusion to alarm. I told him what I'd found, the pack, the prints, the smear. He grabbed his radio and started calling for a search team, his voice calm and efficient. I sat down hard in a plastic chair and stared at my hands. They were still shaking. They didn't stop. He told us his name was Derek, and that was the first lie. I joined the group hike on a recommendation from a coworker who said it was a good way to meet people. 8 of us gathered at the trailhead that morning, mostly strangers, organized through some outdoor meetup site. Everyone seemed normal enough. We introduced ourselves in the parking lot and divided up the shared gear. Derek was quiet, maybe mid-30s, wearing a faded green jacket and a baseball cap pulled low. He didn't say much during the introductions, just nodded and shouldered his pack. I didn't think anything of it. Some people are just quiet on hikes. The trail climbed steadily through pine forest for the first few miles. We spread out into smaller groups based on pace. I ended up near the middle with Derek and a woman named Jess who worked in marketing. We made small talk about the weather and the trail conditions. Derek walked a few steps behind us, not contributing, but not falling back either. When Jess asked him what he did for work, he said he was between jobs. When she asked where he was from, he said he'd moved around a lot. His answers were short, clipped, like he was giving us the minimum required to end the conversation. We stopped for a break at a clearing with a view of the valley. Everyone pulled out snacks and water bottles. Derek sat apart from the group, on a flat rock near the edge. He kept his cap on and his eyes down. One of the other hikers, a guy named Marcus, started telling a story about a bear encounter he'd had in Yosemite. Everyone laughed. Derek didn't. He just stared at the ground, his jaw tight. I noticed his hands were shaking slightly, like he was cold or anxious. I thought maybe he was just uncomfortable in groups. We started moving again. The trail narrowed and steepened, switching back and forth up the ridge. The trees thinned out and the exposure increased. On one side was solid rock. On the other, a long drop into a ravine filled with loose scree and scrub brush. We had to go single file. Derek ended up directly behind me. I could hear his breathing, ragged and fast, like he was pushing too hard. I slowed down to let him pass, but he didn't take the hint. He just stayed close. So close I could hear his boots scuffing the dirt with each step. Jess was ahead of me. She stopped to adjust her pack and I stopped too. Derek nearly walked into my back. I turned to say something and saw his face. His expression was different. Harder. His eyes were fixed on Jess in a way that made my skin crawl. When he noticed me looking, he glanced away quickly and took a step back. I felt something shift in my gut. An instinct I should have trusted. But I didn't say anything. I just turned back around and kept walking. We reached the ridge just before noon. The view was incredible, miles of forested peaks stretching in every direction. The group clustered together, taking photos and passing around trail mix. I was drinking from my water bottle when I heard Marcus say something that made everyone go quiet. He was looking at his phone, his face pale. He said he'd just gotten a signal for the first time all morning and seen a news alert. There was a manhunt in the area. A man wanted for assault. Multiple incidents over the past 6 months. The article had a photo. Marcus turned his phone around. The picture was grainy but clear enough. It was Derek. Same face, same green jacket. I felt my stomach drop. Everyone turned to look at him. He was standing at the edge of the group near the drop-off, and his expression hadn't changed. He didn't look surprised, didn't look scared. He just smiled, small and cold, and said it was a misunderstanding, that the police had it wrong. His voice was calm, almost amused. No one moved. No one knew what to do. Jess took a step back. She said we should head down, that we should get back to the trailhead and let the authorities handle it. Derek's smile faded. He said we weren't going anywhere, that we were going to finish the hike like we'd planned. Marcus said we didn't have to listen to him. Derek moved fast, faster than I expected. He crossed the distance between them in 2 steps and shoved Marcus hard in the chest. Marcus stumbled backward, his arms windmilling, and barely caught himself before going over the edge. Everyone started shouting at once. Derek turned toward me. I don't know why he picked me. Maybe because I was closest. Maybe because I'd been watching him all morning. He grabbed my shoulder and spun me around, pushing me toward the drop. I tried to dig my heels in, but the ground was loose, just dirt and gravel over solid rock. I felt the edge under my boots, and my weight shifted backward. My arms shot out, grasping at nothing. I went over. My hands hit the rock face and I clawed at it, my fingers scraping over stone until they caught on a thin ledge. I held on, my feet dangling in open air. The ledge was maybe 2 inches wide, barely enough to grip. I could feel it crumbling under my fingers, small pieces breaking off and tumbling down into the ravine below. I looked up. Derek was standing at the edge, looking down at me. He wasn't smiling anymore. He just watched, his head tilted slightly, like he was curious to see what would happen next. I screamed for help. My voice was raw and desperate. I could hear the others yelling above me, but no one came closer. They were frozen, too terrified to move. Derek crouched down, his face level with mine. He said I should have minded my own business, that everyone should have minded their own business. Then he stood up and turned away, like I was already gone, like I'd already fallen. I heard his footsteps crunching on gravel as he walked back toward the trail. My fingers were slipping. The rock was smooth and my palms were slick with sweat. I tried to pull myself up, but I didn't have the strength. My arms were shaking, muscles burning. I looked down and saw the ravine, the long drop, the rocks waiting at the bottom. I thought about my family, about how they'd find out, about how this would be the last thing I'd see. I heard voices above me, people shouting, but they sounded far away, distant, like they were in another world. My left hand gave out first. The fingers just opened, too tired to hold on anymore. My right hand followed a second later. I felt the ledge slip away, and then I was falling, the air rushing past me, the sky spinning overhead. I didn't scream. There wasn't time. There was just the fall, and the certainty, and the ridge disappearing above me as everything went dark.